Hey everybody, welcome. We are in for a special treat tonight. Today, I guess, we are going to be cooking a fried gourd recipe from Martoli. Is that correct?
No,
Martino.
Martino.
Martino, with a special
Martino
guest
of
star,
Como.
dun
Yeah.
dun dun, Dr. Ken Albala. So, yay, welcome.
Hi, all. So we saw this, we were talking about the fact that they didn't have squash in the 15th century, middle of the 15th century, only a few decades away, but what they would have used is a kind of gourd. So it's the Lagenaria species. And I remember having bought them in the past here and used them for, hollowing out and making gourds, as vessels. But I remember seeing immature ones like this in the market downtown under the freeway. So I walked and got one yesterday, but hers are grown in your own yard, right? You grew those.
Yeah.
And they look a little different. This is, I'm not sure what the seed situation will be inside, but the way you can tell the squash seed from these is they're sort of rectangular and they look sort of deco-ish to me. They have little striations on them that make them look like they're Art Deco. I'm actually going to try and plant these next year. For next season. I don't know whether they'll work or not, but so I also bought this thing, and I don't know what this is. It's not a zucchini. It's because it's hard. And the person I bought it from said it's like a squash, but I'm thinking this might be some kind of citrullus or something in the cucumber family from Southeast Asia. I don't know, but this is the one we're cooking.
Very
Do you want to describe the recipe?
Oh my goodness. Well, you are the expert in recipes for it all. Let's see. Oh no, I'm not going to bother trying to do a quick screen share, but I wrote it down here. And so there was quite the tangle of translations, and this is one that you suggested. Do you want me to just read the whole thing?
Yeah, this is from Gillian Riley. There's another one that's Jeremy Parzan that was published by University of California Press from Martino. Neither of them are really satisfactory, but this one's close.
Okay, sweet. So take your squash and peel them carefully, then slice crosswise as thin as a knife. Bring to a boil in the water, then remove them and let them dry. Salt just a little, dust all over with white flour, and fry in oil. Dish up and serve with pounded fennel flowers, garlic, breadcrumbs, moistened with verjuice and passed through a sieve to make thin sauce. This is equally good dressed only with verjuice and fennel flowers. You could, if you wish, color the sauce yellow with saffron.
So we're going to do the simple one, which is just the fennel flowers. And the interpretation of that is kind of, I went and found these wild, but I've always thought the fior di finocchio meant the pollen, the flower, the yellow stuff that you pat out. And I'm not sure whether it means that or the actual flowers. This is, not quite seeded yet, but they're very young. They all taste the same, so it's not going to make a big difference. But that's one of the translation things to worry about.
And I was super excited, since I'm growing both the fennel and the gourd in my garden, that they ripened and they were both available exactly at the same time.
That's right. That's what's the coolest thing about this, is it's totally seasonally appropriate. And the other thing that's ready is the verjuice. Right now my grapes are maybe a few weeks away from being ripe, but they're sour still. So if you can look, maybe you can't see, but if you look that way, out the window and out the door, I've got grapes going right there, and I'll just pick a bunch, and we'll put verjuice on these after, and the fennel. The other option had garlic, didn't it, or garlic sauce on it, something like that.
Yep, garlic and then thickened with breadcrumbs.
Yeah, which sounds a little too heavy for today. It's still really, really hot here. And the funny thing is, I went to the other market this morning, just to do my regular shopping, and they actually had these also, which I've seen there. Because yesterday I walked to the market under the freeway here in Stockton, California, and they definitely have them. But that was a long walk in the heat to get there. And then I walked to get the fennel, which was almost as long. So
Although there's very pre-1600s of you to be walking and gathering all your groceries and wild crafting supplies from the roadways.
It was. So yeah, so you can see this is totally an immature fruit. Look at the seeds. Are we can actually eat them. I just ate one. I think I'm not gonna. I think I'm gonna slice them and take the seeds out. But it's very unlike, say, look, this was a mature one.
Ooh.
You know, that was much bigger, and just hollowed out the seeds and let it dry. And this will hold water, you know, or blood mixed with milk if you're a Maasai warrior. But this one is definitely young. You can see the end. The seeds are actually really kind of sweet.
Yeah, and mine is a little bit even younger than that. And you like the seeds don't even come out. It's just almost solid flesh in there.
Huh.
Yeah. Ooh, so I was doing some fun like botany geeking last night, and the bottle gourd apparently kind of got adopted into human use in both Africa and Asia. And then there's all this kind of, there's still kind of thought out there whether it was brought with humans over to North America, or maybe it like felt oceans brought the bottle gourds to the Americas through like ocean currents. And then there's like, even though it's the same species, there's some that have the thicker rind, like what the dried specimen that you showed. And then there's some also that have the thinner rinds, like what we're cooking with. And there's this huge diversity in shapes and sizes and rind thickness, and it all kind of depends on what purpose you're using them for.
How interesting. So what do you think I should do with this? Should I leave the seeds in or try and take them out?
I don't know. I'd go for it.
Because I have a few slices that are whole, that look like yours. Those definitely I'm going to leave whole. But the ones on the edge, I think I'm going to take the seeds out. Even though they're kind of sweet, they're not. I mean, they're edible, but I don't want to eat them this big.
Just because something's edible doesn't mean it's good to eat.
So I'll make a few that are like rings like this.
Okay. And then.
So gives us no indication of how long to boil these, right?
No, just boil it.
So I think probably a very quick boil will be good.
Yeah. It says to bring to a boil in the water. Is that something that they would do, is like put it in cold water and then bring it up to boil, or?
Yeah. I mean, that could be important. I don't know. I forgot about that part, so I just started some water boiling.
But we don't want them like super goopy, do we?
No, definitely not. I think maybe just to soften them up so that they'll be cooked all the way through when they're fried.
Okay. I also have this super immature one here that like is a teeny tiny, almost cigar shaped one. I'm going to just chop it up, skin and all, and see what happens. So more fun botany geeking about the wonderful bottle gourd is that unlike the squash plant, it has a white flower, and the white flowers are usually very typical of things that are pollinated at nighttime, because that big white blossom is a huge indicator for our nighttime pollinators. And so, and the flower itself only lasts about 24 hours. And so it's like this very momentary thing that you either have or have not happen. So it's quite beautiful.
That is totally cool. Yeah, because you showed me the blossoms, and they were sort of frilly and lacy and nothing like a zucchini blossom.
Yeah, they're very diaphanous almost.
So yeah, so it was kind of a convergent evolution of these two completely unrelated plants, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Or maybe it'd be divergent if they're both in the same cucumber. I don't know. More to research.
Yeah, they're not related though, right?
Well, they're in different genuses, so but they're both within the cucumber family. I don't know. I haven't delved into exactly how they evolved or diverged from each other. No.
Huh. Okay, so I've got some rounds, and I've got some that are like little curved things, and I'm just going to put them in the boiling water, and I think maybe just blanch them, because we definitely don't want these to fall apart, right?
No. And I was surprised. I was expecting with like the term bottle gourd to have it be like this really thick, robust thing, but these are actually really tender, just raw. That was cool.
Yeah, I mean it's not unpleasant raw at all.
Mm-mm.
And often I think the most interesting thing about cooking with this right now is that for most of the translations that are out there, they translate zuke as squash, because that's the word that came to be used for American squash, which it's not at all. And, if you buy a gourd, like the old one that I had there, it's inedible. It really just doesn't taste like much at all. This is really pleasant. It's actually even more, it's got a nicer texture than zucchini, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like, kind of almost like a cross between a cucumber and a zucchini-ish, maybe?
Yeah. I'm interested to know what this thing is, because it's not a zucchini. I don't think it is.
No, it's not.
Because it's hard. But I'm betting, I don't know whether this is, it's probably going to have smooth seed. Maybe I'll leave it till later. But these, let's give them maybe just a few minutes to cook.
Okay.
And then drain them. So let's talk about Martino, because he's really an interesting figure. He was the chef for the patriarch of Aquileia, and presumably if he came from Como, that's way up north. So he would have recipes that were, distinctively northern, as opposed to Rome, where Cardinal Trevisan lived, and or worked eventually. And at some point, he met Platina, Bartolomeo Sacchi, who was the first papal librarian of the Apostolic Library. And then we don't know what happened, and no one really knew there was a connection between them until the 20th century. But at some point, it seems that he gave him his recipes, and Platina didn't exactly pirate them. There's no such thing as, plagiarism at that point. But at some point, he took those recipes and put them in his larger book called De Honesta Voluptate, which means on honest pleasure. So these are actually the first printed recipes ever on earth. Platina adds things to them. Sometimes he actually changes them to their detriment to make them worse. He'll change the words, because remember, it was originally written in Italian, and then he translated them into Latin with some sort of Greekified, Latin words, and sometimes mess things up entirely, like the word for melted pork fat, strutto. He chooses the word liquamen, which means something totally different in ancient times. It's fish sauce. He didn't know that. He just thinks, I'll just use this word, and what was a wonderful, really good word, blancmange, for bianco mangiare, which what becomes a blancmange. He could have left in some Latin form, but he calls it lucofagum, which means white dish, which is meaningless in Greek. Eat white is what it means. But, but in any case, these are the earliest published, printed recipes. These look fine. I'm just going to give it another minute, and my water is already up to the boil.
Ooh. Mine have a really good toothsomeness. They're al dente. But I cut mine thinner than yours, so I'm going to go ahead and take.
What they look like? They look actually nice. I think this boiling is just going to cook them through so that they won't be so raw. We cook them.
And the green is almost kind of getting this fluorescent kind of green color to it. It's really beautiful.
They totally are. And this is something that would not work with zucchini at all. If you're thinking of making a substitute, zucchini would have fallen apart.
I tried it last night. Don't recommend it.
There you go. There you have it.
So when we're frying it in the oil, this one, is oil an accurate translation, or is it more like an animal fat?
No, it's definitely oil, olive oil. That's, typical of that time. And I think that this particular recipe they would have used for Lent, when you're not allowed to use animal fat. It's in a section of Lenten recipes, which was still a major concern in the Catholic Church then. So no butter, eggs, cheese, dairy products at all. you know, I think this would have been lovely, you know, it cooked in butter. But I think that's specifically why they use oil, and it would have been olive oil's the universal one for that time.
Although if it's a Lenten dish, isn't Lent early in the spring? And then with fennel blossoms and
you know,
squash too.
yes and no. Lent is in the spring, but there are holidays throughout the year when you fast, the evening of every major festival, and what are called the Quatuor Tempori. There are 4 days around the calendar when you fast, and there are fast days all over the place. So the, you know, the interesting seasonality of this dish, the fact that it's very specifically late August, there's probably some kind of fast day. Even though he doesn't say this, the fact that all these elements are ripe at the same time means it's something that people did regularly. And the fact that they are, there's no animal product in this at all suggests that it's, you know, people weren't vegetarian by choice. So they did it because of religious reasons. So I think that's why these elements came together. You know, it's this, and I bet you, in fact, we should look at a calendar, a Catholic calendar, and find out if there is a specific date right now when people would be fasting. I bet you there is.
Oh, yeah. And then I was looking at one of my gardening manuals talking about making a verjuice, and they actually said to harvest the grapes in July. So that might be also a seasonal offset between like the hotter growing degree days that you get in Italy versus, especially me up here in Oregon, where I'm like clinging desperately to get grapes to ripen in our cool maritime climate.
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. So it is hotter here in California. In fact, it's been over 100 for weeks on end. But the gourd that I'm using is a little more ripe, and the grapes are almost, they're not quite ripe yet. They're still sour, so they'll make a verjuice. But yeah, I'm thinking several weeks ago probably would have been better, you know, for both of these, for California and for Italy, you know.
Right. So for the flour, does it matter what kind of flour that we're using? They call for a white flour.
Yep, that just means wheat as fine as it can be ground and bolted, and so they definitely had white flour.
All right, so just Gennaro standard U.S. flour will do.
No reason not to. That's not going to make a difference at all. I think the other question is whether these. I don't think these are deep fried. I think they're in a pan and sort of shallow fried.
Yay. That makes things easier. And so it calls for dusting. My inclination is kind of to do a dredge in a bowl, or
I think just lightly, you know, salt them. He says put a little salt. Actually, you're way ahead of me. Let me get mine out of there.
Oh, sorry.
They're mine.
I had practice last night.
So those boiled for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes, you think?
I think so. Maybe 5. We were chatting. I lost track of time. Boil into fluorescent green.
Yeah, and the color is really, really lovely. Look at those. They're just delightful.
I know.
Okay, so I'm just going to salt.
Ooh, so, you know, here I was, I'm like, ooh, I just need to heat up this oil in a skillet. And I conveniently turned on my gas stovetop. Do you think the cooking techniques or pans and heat sources that they had back in the 1600s or 1500s would make a difference?
You know, for some recipes, it definitely does make a difference. If things are slow cooked in what they would call a piñata or a cassola, then a shallow clay dish to be cooked in would be very low heat and would react differently. But I think if you're going to cook like in an iron pan, there's not going to be any noticeable difference because we're not cooking them long. We're just going to fry them off so they're a little crispy, and then sprinkle on some verjuice for sour and the fennel for flavor. But no, I don't think the cooking vessel is going to make a difference at all. In fact, I'm going to use Non-stick. So it's just, well, it's bigger and it's easier, and you know. And I think maybe I'll be able to get everything in there at once, which is the ideal thing.
Alrighty. So exciting. Oh, I'm hearing my oil pop. That's a good sign. Maybe not quite yet.
Okay, and I didn't put in much oil then.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, flour. Let me get flour. And I just happen to have a little Italian, you know, doppio zero around, so that's good.
What is doppio zero?
That just means really, really finely milled flour. It behaves exactly like all-purpose, really.
Gotcha. I think I just have standard kind of like red winter wheat. It gave me a giggle because it comes from Southwest Colorado, where my family's from. I was like, what? In Oregon, I can get Southwest Colorado flour?
Sorry, I needed a plate. Okay, so he says let it sit for a while before you flour them. I think that means let them drain, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing over here.
Okay. I kind of had mine already sitting on some, a couple of tea towels. And I don't know if this is a matter of how long I let them drain or not, but the flour is actually sticking to these gourds much better than they did the zucchinis. So I don't know if that's like a texture thing or just a technique thing.
Huh. Well, you know, if you were going to fry zucchini in slices, you'd probably want to add egg to keep everything stuck to it, you know?
Good point.
And breadcrumbs, but maybe this doesn't need it.
Yeah, last night's zucchini done this way was, it was a fried carb. It would work, but.
Okay, so I'm just dusting mine with flour. Let's see.
Okay.
And I'm going to throw them in.
Dun, dun, dun.
The color is so luridly green. It's really wonderful.
Very springy, summery for sure.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Okay, so it all fit in my pan fine, which is nice. And of course, I've got my fingers all gloopy, so let me just get that out. So have you ever grown these before? This is your first time?
This is my first summer growing these. It was just, I don't know why, but like the rare and unusual veggies just intrigue me very much, and especially ones that have kind of this cool history to it. So I thought I'd give them a whirl. And when I got the seed, given that, as you said, they're so Art Deco-y and cool, I was just like super intrigued and had to grow this thing.
What fun.
And yeah, and so when I started really early, like in April, in a pot inside, and stuck it out there, and then about 2 months later, when it really started to warm up here in Oregon, I planted a couple of seeds directly in the ground. And like most cucumber families, they kind of resent being transplanted. They don't like their roots really being messed with. And so the ones that I direct seeded in the ground actually have caught up and surpassed the one that I tried to start early.
How do you like that?
Beautiful. Gorgeous.
Wow.
Now yours look so much more green and vibrant. Mine are kind of getting just yellow and fried looking.
Well, I'm not sure what the difference is, except these are a little more mature.
Oh.
The flour is making a nice little crust on them. I assume they're going to become crunchy. And like any good fritter, will have to be served hot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're doing nicely. So here, I just turned them over. You want to take a look at what they look like on the other side?
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I kind of like how with the ones that you de-seeded, they almost look like onion rings. They kind of have this fun circular shape to them.
Yes, I was tempted to leave them in rings, and then I realized I'm not going to get them all in the pan then. So, very similar effect, but yes, you're absolutely right. And I'm hoping they'll bring out, there'll be some flavor brought out by this process, because I mean, it's not that they were flavorless, but I think like most other summer squash certainly don't have that much flavor frying, and ultimately all you taste is the batter and the oil and the salt and everything. But I think these might actually turn out to be flavorful. I don't know.
I think I may have had my heat setting a little too low to get a really nice, good fry on it.
No, I'm actually very, very impressed, because the last few times I tried to cook gourd, I was using the really mature one, and they were terrible. They just had no flavor, and they were really just not good for eating.
Very
I'm going to
fun.
put them on my nice Renaissance plate here.
Ooh, ooh la la. I'm going
So
to put
let me
them
go
on
get
my
some
lovely.
juice. Okay,
Oh,
so
yes,
I'll just be
juice.
right back. I think one little bunch should probably be plenty for this.
Oh,
It's just
oh
like
wow,
a
that purple?
yeah. These are like they're related to Pinot Noir. They're sort of it's a Carmine, the Davis clone that I grow. That makes pretty good wine, and I'm thinking they might be smoke tainted. They're not, thankfully. I'm all smoke. They're actually really good. It's still just a little sour, so nice. You said that you made verjus a while back?
I did. A couple of weekends ago. I made some up, and I think maybe I did it. I harvested the grapes too green. They were a Dickens to try to get through my press. And boy, oh boy, there was one batch that I did of super green ones, and so acerbic and tart. And the second batch did pretty well. I have still one clump left that I want to go and grab. Mine are an Einset, which is also a type of red seeded table grape, but it's that really dark purple, kind of like a wine grape. So
Interesting. So I have this idea, and I think this is true, because verjus is called for in recipes all year round, and if you make verjus and just leave it around, it'll get moldy. Well, if you put it in the fridge, it'll definitely get moldy.
Really?
What I think probably happened, and this is a discussion I've had at length with our mutual friend David Walden, is that I think they actually fermented. I think they just crushed the grapes, let them ferment sour, and then you'd have a very small amount of alcohol in there, but the sugar would be totally gone, and you'd have a nice sour thing kept at room temperature, would be fine. So,
right, yeah. Shelf
and I've
stable.
done that. So, and it worked fine. But they just don't specify that. So the color on these is finally getting nice and brown. As you can see, they look lovely. They do look like onion rings. Green lurid onion rings.
I think I definitely pulled out my first batch too early. They're kind of pale and limp. That's not very attractive.
And I think if the flavor holds up, the garlic sauce might really make a lot of sense. Now that I'm thinking of it, the outside is really puffing up and frying lovely on mine. In fact, I'm going to take some out just now. Maybe I'll put them on a paper towel just to drain.
Ooh, yeah. The first batch I took out were way too raw. It's just like that cloying oil flour taste. I didn't let them fry far enough, so lesson learned.
So some of these, look, just the color on that.
That's gorgeous. I'm gonna put these away. Now with this, with the verjuice and the fennel, do we need to like grate it in a mortar or pound it or do anything like that to it?
Yeah, I think if you have some young seeds there, I got my mortar right here. I'm just going to pound them up and sprinkle them on. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I really know the reason why you would call for that over fennel seed, but I think it's just because it's more delicate and lighter and won't be, you know, this crunchy thing in your mouth.
And they're in season. Woo-hoo.
So there's one place where I know fennel grows near me, which is out on this isthmus into the San Joaquin River. That is, it's not that far really from me, but it's, you know, on by car, it would take 2 minutes, maybe a couple of miles. But the whole island is just covered with fennel, which isn't native, of course, to California. But someone must have at some point planted it there because it's all over the place.
Yeah, fennel can get really invasive if you're not careful and let it go to seed. So, all right, there's that.
Hey, mine are coming out. They're all there. I'm going to arrange them nicely on the plate and then do the verjuice. That one just needs a little more. Okay. So I'm going to put these nicely onto the plate first.
Ooh, that fennel.
I can't resist tasting one. You want to know something? They taste
Always?
like they're really good, and the texture is very much like an onion ring. That's the weirdest thing.
They
like
are.
They're soft inside, crunchy on the outside. Just a little bit of salt, you know, kind of to. That's really funny.
That's really delightful.
Totally so.
Testament to fried vegetables everywhere in the world.
Well, you know, Martino is full of fritters that are really, they're all over the place. And like, you know, he does elderflower and things like that are just wonderful. But this has got its own flavor. Here, I'll give you a view of what that looks like.
Ta-da!
And I'm going to just pound a few of these fennel. They're not quite seeds yet. They're really just immature. They're the flowers, you know.
I'm gonna
I don't
go
think he wants all
big.
this stuff.
So I'm going to do mine kind of appetizer-esque with a little fennel, or a bottle gourd chip with a fennel flower accent.
And some of mine still have yellow powdery stuff on them. So I think that's pretty close to fennel flower. And, you know, I think maybe, you know, I take it back. Let's not pound these up. These are lovely just as they are.
Yeah. I think that would work well in a modern day reception setting, a party setting.
Just as they are perfectly lovely. And you don't have to, you don't want to mush this stuff. It's just.
And that verjuice is brilliant because it brings in that acidity to offset the oil.
That is exactly it.
Wow. Martino knew what he was doing. This is awesome.
You know, here's the lesson is they always know what they're doing. You know, it's when people mess with it or say, oh, I'm going to do something else instead, that they don't work. Can you see this now? It's really, it looks lovely. And I'm just going to squeeze over the verjuice.
Oh, you're just taking like this whole grape cluster and squeezing it with your hands?
That's it.
That is
Well,
so
let's do
fun.
it. And there it is.
Ta-da! Yay!
And I'm going to eat them
Cheers.
because these are so good. Oh, the
Wow.
grape actually gives you a little sweetness too, which is just because they're not totally unripe. They're still crunchy. And I could very easily eat this whole plate. I might have to. Wow, what fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your help bringing a little bit of the taste of the Italian summer side to our kitchens right now. This is fantastic.
And thank you for inspiring me. I wouldn't have done this unless you said, look, what I have, these gourds. Beautiful.
What do I do with this?